He's now with 2,200 U.S. Marines headed to the Middle East this Friday, demanding that $200 billion, that's with a big B, be spent for this war. I'd like you to listen to your counterpart in the Senate, Thom Tillis, on this idea of $200 billion request.
I don't know what our long-term strategic goals are, but we're going to need to know that. I generally support what the president's doing in Iran, but if we're going to get anything close to the $200 billion supplemental request, we got to get 60 votes, and we're going to have to figure out how to accomplish that.
What are the prospects for this in the House? Seriously, because the senator said it. I mean, we don't know what the money is really going to be used for, or we have no idea how it's going to be spent or what it's going to be spent on.
Democrats are going to be unified in voting no. I mean, you could have free public college for every kid in America. You could have child care at $10 a day for every American family, pay child care workers $25. You could pay teachers $60,000, and you'd still have money left over. But you know, Michael, the problem here, you know, Napoleon once said it's worse than a crime. It's a blunder. This has been the biggest blunder in American foreign policy in the 21st century. And that's saying something. What have we achieved? Iran still has enriched uranium that's buried underneath. They've replaced Khamenei with Khamenei Jr. By the way, Khamenei, the older one, had a fatwa saying, I don't want to build nuclear weapons. The younger son doesn't have that fatwa.
Right.
We have gas shooting up to almost $7 where I am in California, but across the country, 30% up. They didn't plan that Iran would shoot at ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Like, who is planning this? So they have created utter chaos, and the American people see that.
The American people do see it. This is a poll from CBS News yesterday on Iran and gas. One of the questions in the last few weeks, have gas prices in your area been 85% said going up. Another question, should Americans be willing to pay more for gas during the U.S. military conflict with Iran? 67% are not willing. This was a poll of over 3,000 adults, and it was conducted between March 17th and March 20th. Look, you know, Lindsey Graham was on the Sunday show yesterday, and he was making the case, and I've heard a number of other Republican elected officials make the case that we are not supporting our military by criticizing what the president is doing in this war. And I think the reality of the situation is two things can be true. The military operation is, America has the greatest military on the face of this earth, right? The military might is unquestioned. I'm not questioning that. My concern is the harm that we're putting our servicemen and women in, and for what reason? And then the effects of this, from the polls that I just read through, to the American people. This is not supporting our military. I think the best thing we can do for our military is Congress box the president in and get some answers and pull him back before it's too late. 2,200 Marines are on their way to the Middle East right now. If you all do not do something, many of them will die.
Simone, you're absolutely right. And that's why we need to have another vote this week on the War Powers Resolution. But look, we've already lost 13 service members. And Iran is threatening more retaliation against our bases. They're threatening to strike desalination plants in our allies. More of our Marines are going to be risking their lives. And the argument Lindsey Graham is making is the same argument we heard in Vietnam. Don't criticize the Vietnam because of the troops. Same argument we heard in the Iraq War. Don't criticize Iraq because of the troops. Guess what? The folks who came back after Iraq, many of them my generation, they said, never again are we going to make that mistake. You know who else said that? J.D. Vance. He had served. He came back. He said, I don't want to make this mistake. That's how he campaigned. And where is his voice? He's just going along with another war of choice in the Middle East. It makes me so sad, and most sad for the men and women who wear the uniform.
Lindsey Graham is going farther back. He's going to Iwo Jima. I mean, the references. What was almost more interesting to me than what we heard from Lindsey Graham was some of the response that we heard to Lindsey Graham. You had Representative Ana Paulina Luna critiquing the senator. You had Representative Nancy Mace critiquing the senator. When you talk to your Republican colleagues, do you get a sense that they, one, recognize how perilous this is, that, two, they recognize how politically damaging it is, and that they know that if, in fact, they are forced to vote on a supplemental, while they right now own this vis-a-vis their support for the president, they will own it with a line vote with their name next to that dollar amount?
They're beginning to waver. You know, when Massey and I put the Iran War Powers Resolution, we only got 2 Republicans, Davidson and Massey. But now they're having second thoughts for 3 reasons. One, the price of gas. I mean, America, energy matters. Energy politics matter, and they see that at the gas pump. 2, the loss of life and the fact that there's no plan to have more Marines go there and no clear end game. And 3, the fact that the world is just more chaotic in the Middle East. They haven't achieved their objective.
They haven't told us what the objective is. They haven't decided whether the objective is regime change or actual nuclear disarmament.
Right, and they've achieved neither. They've gotten a hardliner in there who actually now believes that they should have nuclear capability, Khamenei Jr., and the enriched uranium is underground. There's nothing they've done to take the enriched uranium that could make bombs and take that out. So the question is, what are they trying to achieve? What is the end game? And we don't even know now if Iran is willing to come to the table. But we know that Oman was. We know that Oman was trying to broker a peace deal, and they walked away.
So what are the... That's an interesting point in the context of where we are right now, because we were talking in the last hour about the cards that the players at the table currently have. And when you're looking at Iran and the cards that they hold, and the Strait of Hormuz would be one of those cards. Right. You look at the cards that someone like Zelensky has, ironically enough, in that, he's been at the table of war for a while now, right, and has managed that. But then the other player is Russia, for example, at that table, who is aiding and abetting the effort of Iran against the United States, while Donald Trump seemingly is cutting these clear pathways for them to benefit from relaxed sanctions, benefit from higher gas prices. But then you have Donald Trump now, I think, to your earlier point, sort of pulling back. How does this sort of stretching of that we see by the administration impact your ability to build the consensus with those Republicans you mentioned, who are now kind of seeing the light a little differently and kind of moving around? How do you get them to lock in and go, you know what, Mr. President, we are with you 1,000% on 99 other things, but on this one, these gas prices are hurting all of us. The death of Marines is a stain, and we don't want that stain to grow. How do you help them communicate that in a way that gives them the room to make the move around the resolutions you're talking about?
They're communicating it privately. They still are hesitant to do it publicly. I don't think I'm betraying a confidence when I talk to Massey that he says in his district they like what he's doing on Epstein, but Iran is still tough politics with the Republican base.
So they would vote against him in a Republican primary?
They're concerned because they just want loyalty to the president on it, but privately people are talking to Donald Trump in the White House saying, look, gas prices are up. Russia is benefiting. You did this whole thing because you thought this would be a move against China, right? They thought they'd have a supplicant in Iran. This is their strategy, who would be basically listening to the United States so we'd have leverage over China, over their oil supply, because they get 20% of oil from Iran. Right. And now we have no control over this person, Khamenei Jr., and China's looking at, they're saying, okay, you're using all your ammunition here.
Right now.
You're using all your ammunition here. And by the way, India's ships and China's ships are sailing through the Strait of Hormuz, and they're blowing up our ships. I never thought I'd see that kind of world. He's compromised American leadership. And so you have people who are genuinely concerned, not about just the moral issue, but about the strategic blunder.
Mm-hmm. Congressman, what you say about what Congressman Massey said about the people in his district, it makes me wonder, so are Democrats and your Republican counterparts that are privately expressing their concerns, are you all talking about how to better communicate why what the president is doing is wrong? Because it seems to me that the public isn't yet there, given this antidote.
I think the broader public of independents are there and Democrats are there. There are a number of Republicans who have this view, as you mentioned earlier, that you rally around the president, you rally around the commander-in-chief at times of war. And I think they gave him the benefit of the doubt. They've given him a few weeks. But as this thing is escalating, as there is no end, as gas prices are increasing, as more people know folks who are serving, who are being sent to the Middle East, that their patience is wearing thin. And I do think the president senses this. This is why he's saying, okay, let's pull back. His problem is it's not as easy to end a war as it is to start one. He needs Iran to stop shooting our allies and stop hitting ships in the Strait of Hormuz. We have weakened our negotiating position because they're thinking, okay, we're going to keep doing damage until we get a better deal. So he has to figure out how we get Oman back on the table, how we negotiate this, and how we get a ceasefire, end this, and get a settlement with Iran where they agree not to enrich the uranium.
Well, at this point, I would say to all those members of Congress on the Republican side, go back and ask your constituents how much the average price of gas they're paying right now, because I bet you in some of these places in the Deep South, it's $5, $6 a gallon, seven in California. I know what it is up in my neighborhood.